This week, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed 2 bills that will prohibit certain nationals from buying land in Florida. The bill's proponents say that these bills were passed by the Florida Legislature in order to protect Florida state for potential threats posed by Chinese investments. Before I get into this particular law and what this means for perhaps the future of Florida or perhaps the future of America, this is the Legal Code, and on this channel we discuss a wide range of legal topics, public policies, and of course once in a while celebrity shenanigans, but only if there's a legal component that you can learn from and it can improve your life. So if you like that sort of thing, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course please share with anyone else you think will find value in this sort of content. Also, I want to remind you that I have a medical tourism trip that is coming, that's scheduled for summer of 2023. So if you're like one of the many Americans that are underinsured, or you have no health insurance and you need medical care or dental care, then I invite you to take the leap to join me as well as other Americans who are sort of in the same boat as you are or have similar stories of the insurance crisis in the United States, and come to Colombia to get treatment at a fraction of what the cost would be in the United States. Colombia ranks number 22 when it comes to healthcare, outranking the United States as well as Canada. So not only will you have robust, advanced treatment in Colombia, it's also highly ranked, highly regarded, internationally renowned for its medical treatment that's also very inexpensive for the quality of treatment that you receive. In addition to the medical and dental attention that you'll receive, I also have tours, excursions, and all sorts of activities scheduled that's on deck as well. So it's a really, really enjoyable trip. It's for 2 weeks, which is, I know, ambitious, but it's also the amount of time I felt suitable for someone who needed medical and dental needs. A week is a little bit too short for that type of service that I'm offering. So if you're interested, the link is in the description box. Now, without further ado, let's get into this law. Am I forgetting anything else in relates to housekeeping? I do have a new YouTube channel also. I forgot to mention, it's called Access Wellness Abroad, and it's a channel dedicated to discussing what other countries are doing to improve the quality of life for its people, the different public policies, the different laws that they are rolling out one by one to ensure the happiness and the productivity of their citizens. So it's really interesting as Americans looking at what other countries are doing to improve their quality of life, and perhaps America can take a nod to these other countries to see what they can do to improve the lives of Americans, because there's no shortage of despondent and disgruntled Americans in the United States, as we have been seeing over the last few years. So if you're interested in that sort of content and taking trips with me through YouTube around the world, it's called Access Wellness Abroad, because I think it's important for governments to be concerned about wellness and not just the GDP and we're seeing more and more industrialized nations also paying attention to wellness and measuring happiness as important and viable and something to strive for, not solely the GDP as a measure of success of a country. So again, Access Wellness Abroad and the medical tourism trips are both linked in the description box. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video topic, the new legislation that was passed this week, May 2023. So again, this new bill rolled out by the Ron DeSantis administration specifically targets Chinese investments in critical infrastructure such as ports, railroads, utilities. Critical infrastructure, according to Florida statute, is any infrastructure that employs measures such as fences, barriers, guard posts that are designed to exclude unauthorized persons, such as facilities like a chemical manufacturing facility, a refinery, and electrical power plant. So under the new laws, Chinese citizens will be banned from purchasing land within 10 miles of these type of facilities and areas under the auspices of protecting the people from Chinese espionage and to root out Chinese influence in Florida's education system. In addition to China, the law will also prohibit citizens of Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and Syria from buying farmland or any property within 10 miles of these military installations, seaport, or an airport. Now, people from China who aren't U.S. citizens are prohibited from owning any property in Florida altogether. So anyone knowingly selling land in violation of this new regulation is liable to civil and criminal penalties. And there's also, by operation of law, an element that forfeits the actual transaction and the land gets forfeited to the government. Now, Governor DeSantis said that this new law is necessary to protect Florida's national security interests. Now, Chinese investment in critical infrastructure, as he sees it, is a threat to the United States, national security and leaves the U.S. vulnerable to threats. Now, these new laws, of course, have been met with mixed reactions. Some have praised Governor DeSantis for taking such a strong stance against Chinese investments, while others have criticized the bill as discriminatory. Regardless of the opinion, the new laws are set to take effect immediately and are expected to have a significant impact on Chinese investment in Florida. Of course, you may be asking, is this legal? Well, whether it's legal is a complicated question, but it's certainly not new for America to marginalize and prohibit groups of people from purchasing land, specifically Black people. As a matter of fact, segregation has been embraced, mandated, and maintained in the United States by law and policy. And here's how. So we've all heard about the Fair Housing Act of, I believe, 1968, which prohibits discrimination in housing by direct providers of housing, such as landlords and real estate companies, municipalities, banks, lending institutions, and homeowners, insurance companies, whose discriminatory practice make housing unavailable to persons based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, or even disability. So this law is on the book. It's on the books, despite the law that aims to protect people from discrimination when they are renting or buying a home or receiving a mortgage or seeking housing assistance or engaging in other housing related activity. In actuality, this law is just performing as if it's protecting these groups of people from home ownership. In actuality, there's a backdoor in maintaining segregation, and this Florida policy shows how easy and readily it is available to segregate neighborhoods. The history of racial segregation is nothing new and is expounded upon in the book The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. The author exposes the historical accounts of public policies that legally and purposefully prevented Black and white Americans from living together. So yes, it's by design and it always has been. Richard Rothstein explains that despite popular belief, housing segregation is not what's de facto, meaning a process that happens naturally as a result of one's individual prejudice, but is actually by operation of law through systems of zoning and other laws that have barred many Black people from owning homes in higher value white neighborhoods and in turn building wealth. The 5th, 14th, and arguably the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution are all supposed to prohibit this sort of segregation by law and policy, but in practice does very little. So why does this matter? You may be asking. Well, you can buy a house anywhere, you may be saying. A Black person can buy a house anywhere. That's all that matters, right? Well, it's not quite that simple. In the U.S., home ownership is the primary means by which wealth is accumulated, then transferred to the next generation. But depending on where a person purchases a home, this impacts the value and ultimately the amount of wealth that's transferred to the next generation. Property value is determined by tax assessment. Properties are assessed based on perceived market value. I say perceived because you really don't know the value of a home until someone gives you an offer or buys a property adjacent to that property based on similar properties in the area. Now, homes in white neighborhoods typically appreciate faster than homes in minority neighborhoods or Black neighborhoods. Yet it may take a while before county or city assessors do any reassessment. Now, during the interval, homeowners in predominantly white neighborhoods have outdated assessed value that are further below the rising market values of their homes than the assessed values of homeowners in predominantly Black neighborhoods. And as a consequence, homeowners in predominantly white neighborhoods pay lower property taxes relative to market values of their homes than homeowners in predominantly Black neighborhoods pay. So now let's look at this Florida law. This Florida law is inviting a discussion about housing segregation, which, as we've seen, was orchestrated by government and not the accidental result of non-government actors or individuals with personal preferences. That is not to say personal preferences or prejudices do not prevent the integration of neighborhoods. That happens too, but it's happening both socially as well as through operation of law, which is really important. It's a myth that it's solely based on someone's racist ideologies or their qualms. Now, we also remember or have heard of the deeds. Now, the deeds on some homes have language prohibiting, let's say, non-Caucasians from owning homes in a certain neighborhood, which makes it appear that housing segregation due to individual actions rather than state and federal government. But the racial exclusion clauses in deeds historically were not only recommended by federal government, but in some cases required as a condition of Federal Housing Administration and Veterans Administration subsidies for the creation of all-white suburbs like Levittown in New York. And federal and state courts, in violation of their constitutional obligation, enforced those deeds by ordering the eviction of Blacks who bought homes, superseding the exclusion clause in the deed. So they actually evicted those Blacks. Though the clause on those deeds are now unenforceable, some people are looking to modify those documents. That's expensive and time-consuming process, as well as sort of whitewashing of history. And perhaps there's an alternative in leaving this statement in there, the exclusion statement in there, and the seller actually acknowledging that this is no longer enforceable and is unlawful, as well as morally repugnant. Perhaps that's better to have an asterisk or sort of an addendum to the clause rather than erasing it from historical accounts. As for the National Real Estate Association rules, you know that real estate agents are licensed by the state, and while being licensed by the state, that doesn't mean that that person is a state actor. The National Association of Real Estate Board has a code of ethics that African Americans could not be sold a house in white neighborhoods. During most of the 20th century, if a realtor sold a home to a Black family in a white neighborhood, the realtor's local board would effectively put him or her out of business by denying them access to the multiple listing service, MLS. In fact, state licensing agencies did nothing to prevent such abuse. So again, NAR, America's largest trade group, finally issued an apology for this repugnant behavior after decades of racist policies that excluded white people from owning homes. As recent as 2021, this policy was made. So until 1974, this segregation was allowed through the Code of Ethics for the realtors. And so here we have it, all fronts, this racism was allowed to prevail. So up until 1974, the realtors condoned and encouraged segregation through this clause and its Code of Ethics by barring agents from introducing detrimental influences into neighborhoods, aka Black people. In other words, professional ethics a generation ago, when the parents of today's Black homeowners might have been acquiring homes and wealth to pass on to their children, dictated that realtors not show them homes in what all agreed were better areas. So that's just another example of how pervasive housing discrimination was, and how it was not based on individual choices that led to segregation, but rested on federal, state sanctioned policies. This is not to discount that there were, of course, some individuals that agreed with these practices. A system like this can't work if Americans' hearts weren't in it. But I present this video to show you that this should come at no surprise. These sorts of laws, the new Jim Crow by Ron DeSantis 2.0 version. So fast forward to today, in plain sight, the Florida government is prohibiting a group of people from purchasing real estate in certain areas under the auspices of national security. Also remember, not only Chinese people are prohibited, but the law also prohibits citizens of Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, Syria from buying farmland or any property within 10 miles of this military installation, seaport, or airport. So how do these group of people pose a threat to national security? How is this law preventing espionage that can't be accomplished, say, 12 miles away from airports, power plants, telecom system, or anything deemed critical infrastructure? If they're 12 miles away, can they not accomplish what this law sets out to prevent? Do the lawmakers not know how technology works? What's really at play here? Why was this group of people banned and not other groups of people? Will this hold up, you may also be asking. I don't know. It may go to the U.S. Supreme Court and challenged as a violation of the Commerce Clause of the United States. The Commerce Clause has traditionally been interpreted as a grant of positive authority for Congress to prohibit a state from passing any laws that interfere with or discriminate against interstate commerce. It's a complicated question. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is a good law? What do you think about the historical account of United States government having a hand in enforcing discriminatory policies that are handed down by the state and the government? Is this a surprise to you? Is this nothing new? Let me know your thoughts. It's a provocative law, and I'm sure it will receive a lot of attention, not depending on what side of the aisle anyone is on. He has a lot of support, and he also has a lot of opposition, but we'll see how this plays out. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.